to the cloud. All right. We have a code of conduct and participation guidelines that apply to this call. And you can read, all of it on the Framer pad, but we encourage everyone to participate and be considerate and respectful. If you have any issues, then you can contact Sarah or Gracielle. And yeah, hopefully this is all laid out clearly. I think a couple of you have already done this, but there's going to be an activity in breaking rooms later. And for this, it'd be really helpful for us to know if you would prefer to speak in the breaking rooms or to contribute in writing. So if you can add an S or a W to your name, so that we can know who should go in which breaking rooms. If you don't know how to do it, if you don't know how to edit your own name, just share in the chat what you would prefer, and then
We
we'll
can
make
also
sure.
adapt, and given the small size of the group, we may also just do it together. So
Yes.
just wanted to, because it's a little bit of an elaborate thing, and it's good to do in breakout when we're, it's a lot of people, but we'll see. Thank you.
It's all right. Well, I think that's all I had to cover. So if you want to introduce yourself, Daniela.
Thank you so much, Elsa and Sarah. So my name is Daniela Saderi. I met, I think, one of you, at least. Hi, Zainab. And I'm originally from Italy. I was born and raised in an island in the Mediterranean called Sardinia. Some of you may know. And I thought that I wanted to be a neuroscientist and in academia. And so I started studying. I always loved biology and nature. I studied a little bit in Italy. I did some internship in Helsinki in Finland. And then thought I was going to go to Germany for a PhD. Instead, I met my husband, who wasn't my husband at the time, but he is from the Pacific Northwest in the United States. It's region Oregon. And I said, oh, sure. He wanted to come back after studying abroad for a long time. And I was like, sure, I can do a PhD in the US. Why not? Completely not knowing was going to go. But I've been living in Portland, Oregon in the United States since 2012. And it's great to be here. I have a little bit more introduction about myself in the slides, but we can get started. So should I go on and share screen?
Yes, that would be great.
Yes. Okay.
I'll post the links and the.
Yeah. So the Google slides, they're also posted on Zenodo. There is a tiny typo that was caught, and I didn't think that was worth changing the DOI for. So you have access to both. So do you see my full screen? Also apologies, I think my children, it's very early in the morning here. My children are still home. Hi, close the door. Yeah. Can you go to daddy, please? Hello, this is Lav. He's 3. Lav, can you go to daddy, please?
We have a keen learner.
Let me figure this out 1 second.
Oh.
Okay. Yes. Have a good day.
Never too early to learn about preprints.
It's 7 a.m. here, so okay. So all right, let's go. This is the 3rd year I think that I do this session, and I readapted the slides to this beautiful template that you gave me. So thank you for that. Let me see if I can figure out how to go. All right. So as I mentioned, I came to Portland, Oregon. This is a picture from the lab that I used to do neuroscience research from. It was really great because we were up high and we could see the volcano, the mountain that you can see from Portland. That's Mount Hood. And this is me in the lab. And halfway through my PhD, I was bored with just doing research. And researching, kind of like looking for other opportunities to engage with people and research. And I stumbled really upon open science, and I have been with it ever since in 2016. And I met these 2 wonderful women, Samantha Hindle and Monica Granados. And together we co-founded Pre-Review. I have just one slide about Pre-Review at the very end, but that's kind of what I do full time now, is working to make scholarly peer review more open, inclusive, and transparent. Okay. And yeah, some of these images are very pixelated. Apologies for that. But so I wanted to just get started on this idea of like open results, but thinking about how has knowledge been shared throughout history. And this is not at all primarily knowledge, and continues to be has been shared via word of mouth. So storytelling, people telling their children what they've learned, and this continues to be a really incredibly powerful way of transmitting knowledge. But when the written world took over, specifically in the scientific, and this is I'm going to have a note about, like, this is coming primarily to thinking about the way of transmitting knowledge in the Western culture, but in different culture have had different ways. But there were literally letters that were written between peoples that were studying different things. So this is an example, Isaac Newton's letter to Williams Briggs, describing what he had discovered. And then obviously fast forwarding quite a bit, the other ways to share knowledge is, I've taken when the print has happened, it's like the Royal Society. There is not an image there, but the first journal was brought on to the research landscape, and so there's starting to be other ways to or like more kind of still like very academic centered ways of sharing knowledge. And nowadays we still have very similar ways to the very beginning of how science was printed, and we share knowledge in so many different ways, for like poster sessions and presentations, and all the way now. I think nowadays we can call like knowledge sharing, or even to me even art, and the way that we continue to express how what we discovered and share it with others. But the point here that I wanted to make is that, to me, the most important questions about, there's a when, so like the timing, the where, and the how. But to me, the most important question we can ask ourselves is why. Why do we even share knowledge in the first place? And before I open up to a little warm-up activity, I want to kind of remark on the fact that a lot of what we are going to talk about, it's very so the processes of sharing knowledge are very Western centric, and they're very like academic linked ways of talking about knowledge. But there is a whole wealth of ways of transferring knowledge, or what is even considered knowledge, that is only, I think, especially in Western culture, only recently brought into like more attention and given credit. And still, it continues to be traditional knowledge and indigenous knowledge continues to be sometimes not considered as rigorous or scientific. And I think that is a big issue, and it needs to really be addressed. And I'm very big. I'm trying to learn more and more of how to incorporate ways of knowing that are different from what I've been taught. So I want to start with a little warm-up activity, and you have the front pad. We can also unmute. It's a very small group, and really it's a simple question. And I think you all are researchers of some kind, and the question is like, why? Why did you even get into research, and why do you want to share it with others? What motivates you to share knowledge? So if you want, you can list 2 or 3 motivating factors. It doesn't have to be a long, elaborated thought. But I just want to get us into that space of like remembering, like, why did we get into this space of research? And so I'm gonna get the frame pad because I lost it actually, because I'm sharing my screen. Let me oh no, I didn't lose it. Apologies. Oh yeah, I did. Okay, so let's see where so we are on activity 1 on the frame pad. So the same prompts that you saw on the screen are there. And you can use that for a few minutes, or we can also unmute if you would like rather share aloud.
Hello.
Yeah, hi.
So, I'm going to start by talking about what got me into research. My name is Ozona Abi. I have recently, oh, wow, this is me. So 5 months ago, I completed my PhD program. When you say, why do we share knowledge? What motivates us? For me, the first thing that came to mind was why even acquire the knowledge?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the foundational grounds for your reason for even wanting to share the knowledge. So I got into my PhD program as an early childhood education researcher. This was bettered by a word or a phrase I heard during my master's program, play pedagogy.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so intrigued by this word because it reminded me of all the activities I have experienced as a child and how different that was from my schooling experience. Because, yes, you have the United Nations going for play as a right of the child and how this should be translated into every sphere of the child's life. And then I am here in England. I'm a Nigerian. I'm here in England and I'm hearing about, oh, how I worked in a nursery as well, a nursery school. And so you could see how children were learning through playful methods. And it got me thinking, like, we know about play, we experience play, but I don't remember learning in that manner while I was in primary school or preschool. So that got that curiosity of, oh, it's been quite a while since I left school. Let me go figure out what's happening in schools these days and learn about how play-based learning is practiced and if at all is practiced in the Nigerian setting. So that was what motivated me to do it. But in terms of sharing the knowledge, along the line and on the PhD journey, I started thinking this is something that is worthwhile and beneficial for children. It makes teaching even more interesting and beneficial, not only for the children, but the teachers as well. So, with what I have learned, how can I help promote
Mm-hmm.
or highlight this benefit, not just to teachers, not just for the benefit of the children, but as far as policy level? So
Mm-hmm.
that has spurred me to like start doing webinars and
Mm-hmm.
hosting a channel where I'm talking about play-based learning and a whole lot of other things. You mentioned something about indigenous knowledge. And interestingly, that happens to be one of the sections I had in my literature review talking about other ways of learning. And indigenous knowledge happens to be one of them. So I'm also looking at spreading word about going beyond the Western ideology of what play-based learning is and relating it to what is contextually realistic and experienced by people. And so I'm pushing for play-based learning through indigenous knowledge systems. So it's just about not just creating the awareness, but
Mm-hmm.
wanting to encourage a system that is self-reliant and
Mm-hmm.
promoting knowledge that is contextually relevant
That's
to the
wonderful.
people who are
We're
going
using it.
to not just experience the knowledge,
Right.
but actually, I'm looking for the right word to use for this. But
Applying it or
thank
just,
you. That's
yeah.
the exact word I was looking for.
Yeah.
So it's not just about acquiring the knowledge, but
Yeah.
applying it. And if it is contextually based, then that application becomes even more functional. So
Yeah.
that's
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. And this made me think of a lot of things. And it is, I can spend hours just talking about even like what we consider knowledge and what does it mean, like this idea of like that is also to me very Western. And I was like, you can discover things. Like the knowledge is already there. And we are just like finding new ways to discover, but it's not like it's not ours. There's a lot of that came up to me when you were talking about it. It seems like and other people have also shared there that you were like we get into this I don't like the word business, but into this way of like trying to because we want to improve whatever it is that we see that needs that can benefit from knowing more of, like maybe just making different connections from what the status quo is. So it is to help a lot of us do that, and we want, if that's the goal, I feel like probably the way that we want to share our research and knowledge, or whatever we have thoughts, our thoughts is to make it as open as possible so that others can also see it. Are there other people? I think we can, maybe one more person can share, and we can also see what other people have written here in the front pad. Thank you so much, though. Your research sounds really important and interesting. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And congratulations on PhD ending. That is, it's a big one just to get that done. So it seems like other people want to prevent others from wasting time, which is, I don't personally think that it's ever a waste of time to do things, but I think that basically it's like we want to provide bricks to continue to build on, right? And instead of moving backwards, which we sometimes do even with knowledge, we want to move forward. And I share research to guide other researchers and share insights. What motivates me is seeing myself making positive impact. I think that a lot of us really got into this space to make a positive impact. So let's see if there's one more person I want to share aloud. Otherwise, I'm gonna go back to the slides. And really all of this discussion, partially because I love hearing people's motivation to get in, but I've never heard anything that deviates too much from what this small group, even with 70 people, a lot of people again get into this space for making a bigger impact and helping us moving forward as a society and a world. And so then there is this, which is a kind of a schematic representation of what it is, that process of gathering knowledge that is, again, very Western academic centric. So you can think about this as a cycle. In this image, it's a line, but you have that idea, or that it's definitely building on other people's. It's not like we come up with new materials in our mind that often, but and we want to start, maybe we have a question that we want to ask, and then we go on, and usually, again, this is a plan how to answer that question, or some studies may be more exploratory. We just go in nature and see what happens. If it is, again, in the context of academia, we may plan the project, we start acquiring data. There is engagement, we learn more and training, engagement with perhaps other communities or other colleagues. We collect the data, and then we analyze the data. There's a lot of work that goes between the raw data and the actual data that gets analyzed. And again, this is a very simple, more life science focused process. The processes can vary, but the point of this is that between the initial question and the time in which that results are shared, there is a lot that goes on. And a lot of the time, all of those processes are completely opaque and are not shared with the world. And there is a lot of, like, a wealth of knowledge in just the processes that remains opaque to other researchers even, and let alone with the people that may be impacted by their work. So, and even when we finally get to that publication line, a lot of the time that publication is also not accessible. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But I want to make a bracket around peer review because I'm in the business of peer review. And so when the process itself of publishing has a big black box that adds even more opacity to the whole thing. So as many of you have probably experienced the process of peer review, and if you have not, good for you. But the more traditional way of doing peer review is submitting to a journal, and then this image just represents this like unknown that happens because it is an editor that may send that paper to reviewers that you probably don't know who they are because it's a anonymized process, and then you're waiting for months at length until you either get a yes or a no, or rejection, or maybe reviews to your paper. The definition of peer review, and then it could be many, points to this process as necessary as a self-regulatory process by qualified member of a profession within a relevant field. And so at Pre-Review, we like to really question this idea of like, who are the qualified members? Who decide what a qualified member or expertise even mean? And another image that is used to represent peer review is also this one that always makes me laugh, but also makes me very sad to think about that it's a process that we really are, I mean, I was taught to fear because, you know, it really represents this person completely unarmed going through a tunnel of people ready to attack us and to tear us down. And there is literally death at the end. Before the acceptance goal. And I was taught that this is just what I need to do to get my research, very strong, is to go through this, and that's the rite of passage. But the other thing that, and I don't believe that that's true. I believe that there is a way to be constructive and helpful, because our goal is to help knowledge advance. So this idea that peer review is just there to tear people down, I think is very problematic. And there is a whole session that I class about peer review that I do. But the point also that I want to make is that this idea of expertise, who are the experts, is not representative of the people who are actually gathering the knowledge. And even in this image, most of the characters are represented and they look white. They look senior in their career, and most of them can be probably defined or imagined as men. And that is actually quite reflective of the makeup of experts, of the people that are the gatekeepers to knowledge in the traditional academic space. There is not a lot of data about the complete representation of reviewers across the world, because that is an opaque process and journals don't release that data. But we have some, and this is most of this data is from these two publications. And so in 75% of the reviewers and editors that reviewed for eLife, I think it was between 2012 and 2018, so it was like a defined period. 75% were men, 92% were from North America or Europe, which is an astronomical number, and definitely. And again, you can say eLife is a journal based in the UK with a US affiliation, so that is probably not surprising, but it is not equivalent to the representation of authors that actually submit to and publish in eLife. And if anything, I would imagine these numbers being even higher for other journals. And they're not early career researchers. So this is another study. This is from this Gary McDowell. And they surveyed researchers around the world. And they found that, and with early career research, that they find anything from like graduate students and postdocs and early career principal investigators with less than 5 years. And they found that very little, 67% of them had very little to no experience in peer review. So the editors that find and recruit these reviewers tended to ask and define expertise with seniority. So without spending too much time, because again, I love talking about peer review, the point that I'm making here is that the process is very opaque, and even within, sorry, there's a screaming child, the process of peer review, that we think that it's like the golden standard of deciding the integrity of review is very opaque, and is very has a lot of overrepresentation of certain groups. So this is why, as we got through, like, how do we bring more transparency to this process? And so up here is what we talked about, which is basically this review process in the traditional sense always primarily happens at the end, right? When there is a paper and it gets reviewed, traditionally via journal, it gets revised, and then you get the paper revised and published. But there are more and more advocates out there in the open science space that have been saying for years that we need to bring more light to the whole process. And the review, the feedback needs to happen in a transparent way much earlier in the process. And that it makes sense. Like, imagine if you're like building a house, and you're just gonna like have the engineers check the plans at the end when the house is already built. That wouldn't make any sense, because it would be a huge hazard. But somehow we've developed this process in which we're just gonna check at the very end after we spend years and years doing that research. And so the Lifecycle Journal is one example that have been carrying out this pilot where every piece of from the research plan, the pre-registration reports get reviews and all the reviews are published openly. But this is not the norm. This is not something that a lot of researchers do. And I just want to make a point about like how some of these like ideas of having modules, so can also be called like modular peer review, is something that we are exploring. Many other people are exploring, not just us. So, and to me, it's just this beautiful idea again of like we don't have to think about like our paper as being this like, rite of passage at the end of years of research, but can we share those results earlier in the process and establish a system in which that feedback is sought out? We want that feedback because the why into which we got into research is because we want to make the system better. And I know that it sounds very naive and positive, but I long for a world in which that's the norm, in which we can embrace modularity, we can embrace constructiveness and feedback, where we are all working together towards a common goal. Sorry, I to put Volvox because it's one of my favorite organisms. If you don't know what Volvox is, go look it up, but you probably do. It's an algae, and it's an organism that has many different parts that work together and live together as a colony. And it's an organism that is used to study multicellular, how evolution has brought from one cell to multicellular organism. And it's a beautiful little algae that I had to put it somewhere because I love it. Okay, are there any, I'm just gonna keep going. We're about to get to an activity, but I wonder if there is any I'm gonna pause here because I can't see. And if there are any observations or things that you wanna share. Sorry, I've been a little bit messy all over the place. I have a huge headache, so my language is not as sharp as it could be. Okay, there is a chat. There's seven things in the chat that I see here. Oh, that's the prompt. Okay. You facilitators, let me know if I need to stop or stop me at any time. All right. So how do we get to persistent identifiers? So in order to, so this is a little bit of a jump, but thinking about like how do we share those little pieces of research, those modules. So think about like the idea is packaged in this like this is what I want to do, and you share that, and then you go and say this is how I'm going to do it, and gather the data, and you share the preliminary data, for example. So all of those modules, in order to be put out there and to be reviewed, but also to be found by others, they need what is referred to persistent identifiers. So this is the way that I kind of sneak in this concept that I'm sure that many of you know. But the definition is from Wikipedia is right there. But basically, the concept is that we are in this online web space, and we want to try to make all of these open results as findable and as accessible as possible. Really, this is about findability. So PIDs are making these objects findable on the internet because you get like a unique identifier or whatever that object is. So here in this schematic, there is definitely like you are probably familiar with digital object identifiers of results. Even this presentation has one because I published it on Zenodo. And these digital object identifiers are released by different entities. Crossref is a big one, and DataCite is that one that gave it to this presentation via Zenodo. But there are also identifiers of people. I hope that all of you have an ORCID identifier. That's really useful, especially there are other Daniela Saderi out there to identify who you are in the space of research. There is identifiers for grants, for organizations. Pre-review has a ROR identifiers. And so when you then put all of these identifiers together, all of these different modules, you can start building a puzzle that makes sense. And think about, we're trying to do better and better at making these identifiers link with one another so that you can track the evolution of that idea and perhaps the reviews and all the feedback that came to that idea from the rest of our community, and build a story that is much more real in about like tracking what actually happens in the research process. And it's also much more useful if others want to build on it. So I have a little quiz. I wish you all called it quiz, but really there is an actual wrong answer. There are wrong answers, but it's more to like just kind of think about like what are those, what is a PID and what is not a PID, and actually recently got this question. So there are these four links or kind of these are numbers and group of words. And I want to ask you all, please don't cheat because there is an answer later. Also, it doesn't matter if you don't know, but which one is not a unique identifier, permanent identifier? Which one of these four? There's one that is an intruder. So let's see. And maybe you can also add why if you want to navigate further. And you can put a number in the chat. You can unmute. You can say, I have no idea. I don't think I would have known this one, honestly, before I got into this space. And 2. Yeah, three. Does anyone want to elaborate on when they thought the 2 or 3 is not? Does anyone want to unmute and say, what are you actually talking about? This doesn't make any sense. Or okay. So the answer is 2. 2 is not a PID. It's not a permanent identifier because it's a URL, and this is a URL too, right? And this is a URL. It's a URL of GitHub repository, and the contents of repositories can drastically change over time. GitHub does track versioning, so you can add and update your versions, and it will show up in the history of GitHub. But the URL that you get there, and this is like the URL to the Alan Turing Institute, the Turing Way, will not bring you to a unique content. So the definition of PID is that you have, in this case, this kind of the different companies, like this is a DataCite DOI, will give you a unique combination of numbers and words that will never bring you to different content. Now, there is versioning in there too. So if I go on and correct my typo for this presentation and put a new version on Zenodo, Zenodo will give me a slightly different DOI that is maybe the last number changes. So it says version 2. So it's linked to the previous version, but it's different. And so if you click on that, it will always bring you to that first version or the second version. And I've wrote here also what the others ones are, just for fun. Okay, it doesn't matter. If you just learn about this and you forgot tomorrow, that's fine. I would just to make sure that it's clear that what an identifier has to be unique, point A to point B contact. Okay. Well, this is also, we're going to talk about open access. And I wanted to frame, like, when I first learned about open science back in 2016, there were so many people. It was a wonderful conference. Probably my favorite is called OpenCon. And I arrived as a graduate student, not knowing anything about anything. And there were people from 67 different countries in the world, mostly early career, talking about open science, open access, open hardware, open education, open everything. And I was like, what is this? And it was really mind-blowing. And open access has been, there's many definitions, but as a movement, if you wish, has been around for 25, almost 20 plus years. And it's really this effort of access, like allowing access to the knowledge, to the results, to anything related to production of knowledge in science. And other disciplines too. So I actually like the term open scholarship better. But open access is just a branch of the broader open science space. So there is a lot more, and that's why I wanted to put that image there. But specifically, open access has definitions that also continue to evolve. And what I put one here is one of the original ones from the Budapest Open Access Initiative. And it really says that anything that is to be considered open access has to be free, freely accessible, and accessible in the internet. And it has freely accessible and reusable for everyone. So it has to be readable. You know, if you have a publication that has, you have to pay a fee to read, that wouldn't make it open access. If there is a license that says you cannot reuse this content, that also wouldn't make it open access, which is really tricky because I feel a lot of people think that just the free component makes something open access. There are other definitions that add even more requirements for being defined open access, but I think that again, this is primarily, you know, the term and the definition that people refer to. And it gets complicated because the way that open access is implemented by different journals and different policies is widely different and also confusing with a bunch of colors and gems that appear in the scheme. So I put here the most common one. The main way that traditional journals have implemented open access, meaning like making their content free. How many people here have tried to read literature and then found what's called a paywall? You have to pay $36 to read this article. I continue to do it because right now I'm not in academia and I continue to find barriers to reading papers that I want to read. And usually I get angry and I say these papers are worth reading. But a way that around like to make open access became more and more popular, and some funders began to say more and more like the content of what you publish, if we fund you, has to be open access, is the route that is being chosen is this gold OA. So let's just unpack, let's just look at this gold OA column right now. What that means is that if you're publishing, submitting to a journal and you want it to be immediately available to the public without what's called embargo period, there is no period in which that research is not accessible, it's not free. Someone has to pay because we live in a capitalistic world, right? And so publishers to make some money. So what happens is that it still costs money, but instead of paying for reading, you pay to publish. So then the researchers, you have to pay to make that research open. And it's called paying this APC, so author processing charges. And then the journal will say, sure, if you pay me like up to right now, it's like $12,000, we will make your research freely available and with an open license. So this model is obviously problematic from many sense. It's inequitable. And so now there's a shift into like, there are other ways to make things open access that are, you know, more equitable around. And so there have been, Diamond Open Access is an emerging knowledge far away from being the main one, where basically everything is open and free and nobody pays anything, which you can imagine how does that actually work? And someone has to pay for the service. So there's a lot of debate around the sustainability of Diamond Open Access. There is also, we can let go of this different too, but I will spend a little bit of time talking about preprints and how those are a way for this green OA, which is basically it's bypassing journals, or self-archiving could be considered as green open access, where the authors actually put their research out there on their own choice without having to go through a journal. Okay, I'm sorry if this becomes a little technical and boring, but we are here. I wanted to, I go back to like when I was a researcher, and if I was told like, okay, now it's on you to figure out how to make it open. And I remember that that's what it was. I came back from this conference and I was like, hey, I don't want to publish any more of my papers that are not open access. And my boss was like, well, you know that there is a cost associated with that. Or also like, do you know what journals are open access? And I had no idea where to even begin. I guess I Googled things, but I wanted to bring to light, to highlight a couple of tools that not many people know. I definitely didn't know. and one that you can use to search if the journal that you want to publish your research on is open access. And one is the OAJ, which we're going to do a little exercise on. And the other one is, which is a community curated list of all open access journals. And it's multilingual, and it's just on itself a really great project of cataloging and providing information around what's open access, but also going beyond and talking about like the licensing, the price, and we'll see an example. And the other one is provided by JISC. I don't remember what JISC stands for, but the Open Policy Finder. This is a tool where you can actually find the open access policies of publishers, journals, and funders. So if you're not sure that what your funder, if you have a funder, if what their policies relate to open access is, you can search in this engine. And I completely forgot and failed to put links to it. So it's another thing I need to update. But you can, if you Google Open Policy Finders, you'll find it. And on this end is actually how you can make your research open access. And OA Works is a wonderful project, is operated as a nonprofit that actually will help you make your research for which you have already published and has a DOI, make that research openly available. So there is this tool called shareyourpaper.org. You can plug in your DOI, and it will give you instructions legally on how legally to make your research, that same research, open access. And there is explanation on the website about how it works. Not always possible, but if it is possible, they will help you find a way. The other fun way to actually make your research open access is by putting on a preprint server, and we're going to talk about that after the activity. Sorry, my video goes off on its own. So as soon as I stop sharing, I'll reopen my video. I can't start video. No, I don't know how to turn on my video when I'm sharing, but here we are. So we are going to do a little activity together. And I had envisioned this for many people to do it in a breakout, but maybe we can either have 2 breakouts or we can do this together. It is a little bit better, I think, if you do it on your own. Maybe like each of you can choose one of these 4 articles. And as I go through the steps, you can do it on your own in your computer. And then we can share aloud what happens. Would that work, you think? Better than breakouts?
Yeah, yes.
Can we get some, yeah? I was going to say, can we have some thumbs up? Is everybody happy to continue in the main room?
Yeah, yes, for me.
Okay.
We got one yes, but okay, so that's what we're gonna do. I would like you, if you are able, and I'm gonna do it together also, if you are able to open a new, to go in your computer, if you're on your computer. Because I also know that maybe not everybody's on the computer, so that could be tricky, but I'm gonna put where is the chat? Man, sorry, I like loose. Here is the chat. Where's the chat?
They
There
have
you
the
go.
link of I've posted
They
the
have
link
it.
of the
Okay.
DOJ and the prompt.
Thank you. Okay, so then go to DOJ. Thank you for your help. And I'm gonna do the same. I'm gonna go to the DOJ website, and that's what you find. I'll give you also some fun statistics. And from when I gave this lecture last, they increased these numbers. Like this was like 20,000 journals, and now it's almost 23,000, which is awesome to see. And then we're gonna choose one of these on these journals. You can also just try a journal that you know. These are just like 3, 4 example. I'm gonna take the South African Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology. I'm gonna copy that, and I'm gonna put it here. So if you wanna do the same with another one in your own computer, that would be helpful so we can compare searches. Okay, so then we're gonna do all fields. There's filters there, but we're just gonna do the search for that title of a journal. So this is basically why are you doing this? You wanna know if the journal, for example, my PI was like, I think we should publish this research here in this journal. And I wanted to know if that journal, what was their policy around open access, around preprinting. And so you can use that if you know of a journal that you like in your field, you can see what is the actual policy related to open access using this tool. So now that you click search, is everybody in this stage? I got only one hit for eLife. Yes, so that's what you want. It's one hit. And you have to click on that hit because it will open a new window. So once you get that one hit, because again, you can also search by field and it will give you all of the different journals. Like you can put neurobiology and it will give you all of the journals that have the neurobiology word in it, or you can put just the field. But in this particular exercise, we already know the title. We're not searching for an open access journal in our field, which is another application of this website. But if you hit on eLife, you just click on that, like I did here. So you click on, it will be eLife or it will be current research in neurobiology. I put journals that I know. So and then you may even put a journal that actually is not open access and it will tell you it's not here, right? So that's another important information. But most journals, well, I don't have to say, but like a lot of journals, especially in my field, have a golden open access, so they are registered here. So then here's what I get. It's like a lot of information about the South African Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology. And if I go back to the instructions, it will give you a dashboard and there's a lot of information there. And the questions I have for us to explore is, first thing, what do we notice? Does the journal have what's called APC, an author processing charge, meaning do you have to pay to publish open access? Do the authors retain copyright of the work? There is information there about the license for the journal. So if we go back to this dashboard, there are all of these windows. And what we notice for this particular journal here is that yes, right? The answer to that question, initial question for the first, for this journal is yes, you have to pay to publish. So there is a publication fee and there is all of these links that will bring you to the actual policy of the journal. I want to pause and see like what other people are noticing about other journals, what your search did. So if anybody else did something different from what I did, like maybe you did a history of geo and space sciences, what do you see here in this first box? Does anyone want to unmute? Or maybe you're writing it into the...
I did the current research in neurobiology.
Yeah.
And that was versus showing it is paid for and it's $2,930.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there is an APC for current research in neurobiology.
Yeah.
So you have to pay, the authors have to pay to publish that open access. That is correct. Current research in neurobiology is an open access journal of Elsevier.
Yes.
So we'll see some differences when we look at the licensing between the one that I have and yours. Has anyone done the history of geo and space sciences? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Dr. Hassan, I think, did eLife and answered yes to the first question. So the journal charges up to $3,000.
Yep. Yeah, eLife also does that. They have an APC, author processing charge. The eLife has a whole particular different model now, but there are APC. Has anyone done the history of geosciences? Otherwise, I'll do it because that's the only one that's different on this axis. Look at that. No publication fees. So this is supposedly, probably a diamond open access journal. So you don't pay to publish. And also because it's in this repository, otherwise it wouldn't be there. The reader doesn't pay to read. So I would guess that this is a diamond open access journal. So it's the only one in the 4 examples. All right, going back, the other question that I asked is like, what about the licensing, right? And so this journal, the South African Journal of OBGYN, has a license that is the CC BY NC. Creative Commons provides a lot of really great information about licensing, and what they do, even though we're not trained to do as research to know what that means, is that they help understand legally how that research can be reused. So remember, we talk about how in order to be open access, the research needs to be reused. In this particular license for this journal, it means that the authors retain the license to their work, but it's in a non-commercial. So someone can reuse their work. They have to cite it. They have to say that is, you know, a research that I'm reusing comes from that source. But you cannot do it if it's for commercial purposes. It seems like the second question for eLife, it's CC BY, which is CC BY 4.0, so it means like attribution, or CC 0, which means completely open. Anyone can do whatever they want with that object. So you can see that even with licensing, which is something that, again, as a researcher, nobody ever talked to me about, that you are really making decisions, or the journal is making decisions for you, but you can decide where to publish, about how much your research will be able to be reused and built upon. And we don't think about that a lot. But if we go back to that why are we doing this? We should be so important that we actually know the choices that we're making or where we put our research will dramatically impact how the access of the research for others. And in the interest of time, go ahead.
No, it's
Elsa?
just for eLife.
Yeah.
Dr. Hassan also highlighted that the author retains copyright and publishing rights.
Yes. It's not the case for current research in neurobiology, if someone has seen that. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm just actually going to show this real quick. But the other thing that you can see here, and I think that this is true for every journal but the current research in neurobiology, you can click on the Open Policy Finder, which is that tool that I was telling you about earlier. And it will give you more information about what is their policy for self-archiving for all these stages. So when you submit, there is no embargo. You can put your manuscript in a preprint repository. Most open access journals will be okay. If not, actually, like eLife will go ahead and put a preprint for you if you haven't put it already, and at these different stages. So you can have also a choice about if this journal doesn't, to make this research free and accessible to everyone at different stages of the publication. Okay. I wanted to take a little break, if you're okay with that, and then we can go to the rest. I have a little bit more on preprints, and I think that this is, obviously one of my favorite topics. And then we have a half an hour still, right? Is that correct? So let's go on and take like maybe come back at the 5 minute of the hour, if that's okay with you. Stretch, get a coffee or tea or whatever you need, and we'll be back in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. I'll put a timer on.
I did not know this function of Zoom. I feel like transported back from the future. So it's like,
I never know which music to choose, but yeah.
Oh, can you choose the music?
Yeah, they have like the 7 options or something like that. But
oh my gosh, that was very sci-fi. I like it. Well, I hope you got hydrated, and if you haven't, do it, because always need to drink 3 times as much water as you think you need. That's my life mantra. Okay, so we're back, and I'm gonna start sharing again, and my video will probably go off again at some point, because that's what this camera does. I'm not sure why. It tries to save people from seeing my face for too long. But okay, so we're back, and we've been hinting and talking about preprints, and now we're just gonna look more deeply into what they mean. But I'm actually curious if you can use. First of all, it would be nice to know that you're back from the break. If you can use your Zoom emoji or raise your hand to let me know that you, thank you, I know you're back. But actually the question is, who knows about preprints? Have you heard about preprints? Maybe you can unmute and say, like, have you published a preprint? Have you read a preprint? Has anyone engaged with preprints before? Maybe just use it. Yes, it seems like someone has definitely heard about preprints. Anyone has published a preprint in this space? Elsa? Precious, maybe? Okay, so maybe some of you have already heard and engaged with preprints. Was the number one thing that when I came back from that 2016 meeting, I learned about preprints from ESA Bio. It was Jessica Polka, the director of ESA Bio at the time. And I just desperately needed to do something with all of the amazing knowledge that I just learned. And preprints were the thing that it gave me an anchor or like a way to bring some of that, what I just learned, to my work and my department. So I learned more about preprints then, and I started bringing them more into my work and discussing them with others in my department. So what are preprints? Preprint is a scientific manuscript that is uploaded by the authors to a public server. There's so many definitions as everything, but this is one from ESA Bio because they are experts in preprints, and they contain data and methods. They can contain data and methods, but they have not yet undergone journal organized peer review. So the definition of preprints, the most important things is that the author decides when the research goes out. So we talked a little bit about green open access. Preprints are a route to open access because if you look at, I love Scriberia, they have done a lot of beautiful images. This is a little bit more complicated than some, but basically here, this little train here is your research, and you're just like, walking along or like riding along, and if you want, you can put that in a preprint, that research in a preprint server before or at the same time that you send it to a journal. Now, back in 2016, there was a lot of fear that a journal would then reject you because you've already done it. And so that's like, if you put a preprint out, there's still a lot of fear. We're going to look at some of the major fears for preprints, that a journal may not then publish it. And you want that journal publication, maybe because that's the way that we advance still in career at the moment. That's not true for most journals. I would still recommend that you go and check on the Open Policy Finder if the journal that you want to submit to, you can also ask the journal, right? If they're okay with you posting a preprint. I think I don't want to say that, but like most journals right now are preprints okay with you posting. So you can self-archive and then you submit to a journal at the same time if you want, or you leave it as a preprint. And you keep going in your journey of publication. And then here is where you have, the difference between, these are open access routes. The gold route where you pay to make it open access, or the diamond open route where funders or institutions pay. This is debatable who is paying for diamond, but we don't have time to go into that details. And then there is also another still green or open access route, which is that after you publish, you can still find ways to make your work, to self-archive it in a repository somewhere, to make it sure that it's accessible and free also in that way. Okay, so
we have a question. I don't know if you want to answer now or keep it to the end, but
no, now, sorry.
Good.
Yes.
Is publishing preprint safe?
Yes.
Plagiarism and data theft issues.
Hold on one slide. We're gonna get there. All right, so I just wanted to show, this is one of my favorite slides that was created by ESA Bio and with a bunch of emojis from Mozilla. So two of my favorite organizations are in these slides. And this is just going quickly through that process of publishing that we kind of hinted to, but we never had the diagram for, which you may be familiar to. You submit to a journal, and then maybe all three reviewers or the editors themselves say like, nope, this is not fit for this journal, or the reviewers were like, this research is unpublishable. And then you're like, okay, great. So then you take your research, you repackage, reformat it, send it to journal number 2. And then maybe 2 reviewers says, sure, but you're going to revise. The third one says like, no, actually, this is terrible. And the editor has to make a choice. They have different ways of dealing with this, but like they may tell you go on and publish somewhere else, or maybe they were like, okay, sure, revise and resubmit. But the point here is that it can take months, 2 years, depending on the disciplines, to get to that light space. So on top you have what's public, and down is what's private and opaque, and nobody sees it. And even when it's public, then you may have to pay for access, which is what we already discussed. So what preprints allow you to do is that you can take that manuscript and either before or at the same time, or as the only thing that you do, you can publish it in a preprint server. And depending on the preprint server, and there are many, many preprint servers, it can take a day or two before it sees the light. And so just going back to that why, if your goal is to really like build knowledge on together with others, this should be the way that we share our research, and it should be the way that it's rewarded to share our research, rather than going through this process. And I understand that there is a lot of concerns about putting research out there, especially nowadays with publication, that it seems like if you don't go through peer review, that could be really, really dangerous. But I will get to that point in a second. There is a way for check, even with a preprint route. So we're not just saying that you can have a Wild West where everybody puts everything out there and it's considered research. We quickly want to mention the preprints are spiking up, and they actually really took off after 2020, when the pandemic brought all the minds together for a second and said like, oh, wait a second, it is important to share research soon, because people are literally dying at fast pace all over the world. And so that was a moment of understanding that actually preprints were helpful in that sense, and research went much faster because we could share it at a faster pace. This is also a paper, and again, this is mostly for you if you're curious, but to see that breaks down the publication of preprints. And again, this is data from specific preprint servers. I don't think every single preprint server in the world is here, but to show that the trend of increasing of publication of preprints is increasing around the world, but the numbers, the percentage is different across different continents. And this dip here, I believe it's now a plateau, but at the time when they did that, the collection of the data, that was still low. So it was in 2023. Okay, so now we can get to that question. So these are in bright colors. I love this green, is the benefits versus the common concerns. And some of the benefits for preprint that people recognize, and again, there's a citation there if you want to read the full paper, is that they're free to publish and free to read. Again, it's the green open access route, right? And that's awesome. They get greater visibility. There is actually research showing that you get more citations of your work if you have also preprinted it. So there is also an advantage, because we measure everything in citations in academia. You can claim priority. Preprints was found or started in 1991 with a preprint server archive, which is still exists, primarily for physics and mathematics and computer science. And the reason why they started it, one of the reasons, was because they want to say, hey, I've done this research, and they wanted to have, to show everybody, have that DOI. It's like, now this research is citable. I am planting the flag. I'm the first one who did this experiment, and here I can demonstrate it. Which is interesting, because the fear of being scooped, as someone said, or being, data theft is one of the first concern about preprints, but it's also one of the reasons why preprints were created, to actually avoid data theft. Increased citations, I mentioned that. Opportunity for early feedback. This is my favorite, that's why it's bolded, because you can actually get more feedback sooner on your work, and I'll briefly talk about that. And then it's also proof of productivity, a lot more. Like I remember in 2014, before I even learned about preprints, the National Health, oh my gosh, NIH. I'm so tired. The NIH and other funders have said preprints can be included in your CV as a proof for that you are actually producing knowledge. And if you're an early career researcher and you have to wait those times to publish, and you're applying for a new job, it's really difficult. And if you post it as a preprint, you can demonstrate that you actually have a paper out there that is coming out, or it's already out there actually, and publish, and reviewers can read it. So the fear of being scooped is a big fear. So you talked about, are they safe? I believe that they are because I'm a reader and biased, but I also completely understand the fear of putting something out there in a world that is not what I want it to be, when there are actually people trying to exploit and extract. And if you know, thinking about me, and you know, if you're in a research institution, for example, that has fewer resources than another one that is doing the same work in a very well-resourced institution, I actually believe that that fear is valid. But I also see a lot of more protection for that. So if you do have a preprint out there, it is a way for you to claim that that's like your, you know, that was the first time that was put out there. So data publication, the publication of the data set, it's kind of a different. Some people are like, you know, I believe that it should be accompanied by the data set. But also, you know, data sets getting their own DOI, you're also saying this is my data and it's citable. So someone who reuses the data for doing new work, they have to, if you apply a license, they have to cite you. And so the fact that you have it out there with a date and a DOI, to me, is protection from theft rather than, and what it allows is to do what you are here for, building knowledge and helping others. But so the answer is complicated. I believe that it's safe, and it's again, there are funders right now, as I'm going to show in a minute, that are actually making it mandatory to post preprints. So the sooner you can be dipping your toes into what preprints do and how you do it, the better, because I see that the space is changing and more funders are making it a requirement. Journals don't promote preprints, and generally it's difficult to publish in another journal if it's rejected in the first journal with preprint agreement. I don't know. Do you want to elaborate? I don't know what that. I've not seen that happening. And if the journal rejects it, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Daniela, actually, I
Yeah.
just want to highlight here now, when suppose we submit our paper in one journal who already has an agreement or suggestion to submit it before submitting to the journal, submitting it on a preprint server like Biorex, etc. So if the paper is fortunately selected on that journal, then it's okay. But if unfortunately anyhow it's not selected on that journal and got rejected, and we have to submit it on another journal, so means the journal don't appreciate this. Because I'm actually facing this issue in one of my paper.
I see.
It's 1 year and it's not being accepted means yet. So that's why I have a concern about that. So
But you have a preprint of it, and the journal is making is upset because you have a preprint. Is that a problem, or because you were rejected in the first journal?
No, they didn't say this, that because of the preprint, but I think that because I don't have face means such type of delay in my other papers. So I'm just encountering this problem with one of my paper in which I have submitted it on a preprint server before submitting to the actual journal. So this is my first experience, and I'm getting this. So just want to know from your end, what is the actual problem?
It's difficult to say if that's the issue that is making the second journal not wanting to publish. I mean, if they don't say it, it's you are assuming that the fact that it is a preprint may be what's holding them up. But it sounds like, and maybe I misunderstood you, but maybe it sounds like you're not sure that that's why. I can see why, like if you're saying like, oh, I put a preprint out like 2 years ago and I'm trying to now publish this, a journal might think, oh, this is old news, or like, they can make up stories in their mind. But I don't know if that's what actually it's happening. I'm sorry that you're having trouble publishing. I cannot say for sure because nothing is sure in life. But I wouldn't I wouldn't say that that's the reason why, unless they're telling you. And if that's the reason why they're not publishing, you should go to another journal, because that's not a very good reason for it. And also, like, I'm thinking about the fact that it's holding up so much. Like, you have a preprint out there. Hopefully, is that your experience that you're actually able to cite that work and to like build on it, like other people have already seen it. How has that experience been for you?
Yeah, thank you, Daniela. I think it might be due to the duration, means if it's more than 1 year on a preprint server and still not get published, so journal reviewers and editors have less interest for that. Maybe I'm just assuming this one, but
Yeah. I'm sorry you're experiencing. Maybe try to, see if there is journals that has more open policy. And again, there are some journals like eLife, but there are other journals out there that will actually require a preprint. So again, there's different ways. And unfortunately, journals can do their own policies. They can do whatever they want. But we will never know, right? You have to do an experiment where you publish the same thing, you do a preprint, and then the other one you don't do a preprint and see if that changes. But even then, who knows what's the reason why that's hold up. I'm really sorry you're experiencing that. That's annoying.
There was a question by Precious. If I have my paper published on, let's say, SSRN, will I still be able to put it on a journal?
SSRN is a preprint server, but it's a preprint server owned by, I forgot who. It's like one of the big publishers. Is that Springer Nature? I think it's SSRN, one of them. So it's not a public preprint server. I believe SSRN will deposit the preprint record. So I don't know if anyone can do a search. I forgot. There are so many proprietary preprint servers. SSRN specifically, it will be that you have to submit to one of their journals after it's a preprint. So if you want to put it in a preprint server, this is the slide. There are so many different preprint servers. This is just few of them. And there are, for example, like, my discipline bioarchive was the primary one. And if you put it there, then you can put it in any journal. But there are some preprint servers that are linked to the journals, and SSRN is one of them. Or Research Square is another one that you have to publish in one of their journals, because they'll deposit that for you, but then it's your link. You can look it up. Sorry, I don't know the answer. I may be wrong. Okay, so I think that we have 6 minutes, so I need to better finish up this. There are many preprint servers, as I mentioned, and if you want to find the one that is right for you, there is this nice server directory, preprint server directory on the SA bio, and it's a link that you can click on in that. And you'll see that there are different kinds of preprint servers and some general purpose repositories like Zenodo. You can put you can input data there, presentations, and some that are like more specific discipline-wise. Some are like specific to regions, like Africa Archive, in RIN Archive, which is for Indonesia research. And so there's a huge variety of them, and it could be difficult to think about where to do it. But once again, just like check out, maybe what are other people in your discipline, where are they publishing, and try. I don't think there's any different policy based on the preprint server, except for when they're owned by the journal. As I mentioned, more and more funders are not only recognizing the value of preprints, but they're making it mandatory. So in the United States, funders like the Aligning Science Across Parkinson, the Gates Foundation, HHMI, which is Gates Foundation is a global, HHMI, the Templeton World Foundation, Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, Michael J. Fox Foundation, they're making preprints mandatory. So if you get money from them, you have to post a preprint. And so I think that it's very important to keep learning about them. And I don't like change that is imposed from the top. I like change that emerges from the bottom. So I'm a very big fan of, choice. But when something becomes mandatory, I think it's important that the researchers are also equipped with the tools and the knowledge to know how to be compliant to those policies. And some of these funders are doing a really good job helping their researchers understand how to navigate this space. There's also another tool, if you haven't had enough tools, called the Journal Checker tool. Some of the tools I talked about the previous years are no longer existent. This one still works. You can cross-check the journal you want to publish on, the funder and the institution, and it will tell you if you're okay to do open access, and if you click, there's like another button that says tell me more, and it'll go ahead and tell you like, yes, you can deposit a preprint. Yes, you can, you have to do open access, for example, because the Gates Foundation will actually require that. So you can kind of play with these tools to find out. Also in reference to your institution, which may have yet another policy around open access. Okay, so the last 2 minutes, I wanted to say that my favorite thing about preprints is that anyone can review them. So, we say like one of the concerns about preprints is that they're not reviewed. And so, oh my gosh, what if we put out there research that is fake? Well, to me, first of all, fake research passes peer review all the time. Traditional peer review, but here you get so much more eyes on the prize, right? Preprints allow for more people across different expertise to actually look at that research. And there are examples of research that have been retracted in 24 hours because it was posted as a preprint. They read it and they're like, this is completely wrong. And many, many people put comments and they got that retracted at much faster pace than a traditional process would have allowed. And so I want to end by a shameless plug. I have some stuff there in the frame pack. But what we do at Pre-Review, we're a nonprofit, and we really believe that anyone should be allowed to provide constructive feedback to research. And so we have a tool that anyone can use to review preprints. We are connected to 31 or 32 preprint servers, and you can get the DOI of the preprint and start reviewing it. And there are different ways that you can do that. You can use your name associated with the ORCID ID, and you can also use a unique pseudonym. I put some instructions. If you want to just try it out, use the link, the sandbox at prereview.org. It will not generate a real review. It will just show you how the process works. And I want to thank you, and I hope that I can continue to see you in our space. And if you want to learn more about peer review or chat with other people that are passionate about preprint review, join our Slack. And we have a bi-monthly newsletter that goes out with some cool stuff in there. So thank you so much.
Yay, thank you, Daniela. That was great. Are there any last minute questions for Daniela? I also shared in this chat that people can just ask the questions in the Framapat or just ping you on Slack and you'll be around.
Yes.
We're very fortunate to have you around the
Oh my
OLS
gosh.
Slack already. So yeah.
Yes. Sorry,
If
I
not-
didn't leave much time at the end. I think I went
That's
quite
okay.
slow.
No worries. So if no one else has any pressing questions, I think we are ready to close. I just wanted to remind you that this was the last training call for the Nebula cohort. This is a bittersweet moment. We have graduation calls next week. So I have added all the information on the Framabat from line 164. You should also have received an email and also have the information on Slack. But please don't forget to sign up to whatever session you prefer to sign up in the spreadsheet, which I'm also linking here. For these graduation calls, you just need to prepare a 5-minute presentation with just stating like what you normally do, what have you learned from the program, and how are you going to apply what you've learned in your own work. And literally that's it. Then you can deposit it on an open repository like Zenodo and share with us in our final feedback form. That it's all the steps in there, but if you have any questions, please get in contact. Otherwise, I'll just let you know. I'll just let you go. Thank you so much again, Daniela. That was a great session, and thank you for all the materials. Thank you all.
Thank you,
It was great to
everyone.
have you here.
A privilege to be here with you all. Bye.
Susanne,
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
thank you. That's okay. I'll stay a couple of more minutes in case people have any questions. Yes. You're muted.
Sorry.
No worries.
I didn't get to sign up for any of the coaching sessions because my timings were quite here and there. So I was wondering, is it too late to sign up for one?
Yeah, unfortunately, we had the last one yesterday. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, that was unfortunate.
My fault.
If you're interested anyway in talking to any expert in particular, like most of them are in the cohort channel.
Okay.
So you can always drop them a question, and see where it gets from there. So yeah, don't be shy. Like we are very used to speaking on Slack. So I would encourage to start from there.
Okay. Thank you very much.
That's
Bye.
okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you so much. Any other questions? If not, thank you all. It was great to have you around. Bye bye.